For just one time, I would take the Northwest Passage to find the hand of Franklin reaching for the Beaufort Sea, tracing one warm line through a land so wide and savage, and make a Northwest Passage to the sea. Westward from the Davis Strait 'tis there 'twas said to lie, the sea route to the Orient for which so many died, seeking gold and glory, leaving weathered, broken bones, and a long-forgotten, lonely cairn of stones.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans in the United States and Newfoundland.
There are more of us than ever before. But it's always a question of quality as against quantity in this life.
You've got Rasminsky and the Bank of Canada saying the country is going to pieces practically every year for the last 5 or 6 years.
But in the background is a much wider and more suggestive question connected with the fact that Canada seems to have moved from a pre-national to a post-national phase of existence without ever having been a nation.
Ed Turner, just once any you nation, do not have a monopoly on patriotism.
Hello and welcome to the Red Ensign Special, Prarie, Populism, and Manufactured Consent. Now today on the Red Ensign Special, we're going to take a break from looking at the elite dynamics and geopolitical forces that shape our country and its future, and we're instead going to look at the craft of manufacturing consent, that craft which is so essential to political units within the Western world, where popular sovereignty is the overwhelmingly dominant political formula by which our elites justify their power. We're going to do it not only because it's kind of a fun exercise to take a break from more serious academic work, but we're going to do it because there is a unique plethora at this moment of really, really beautiful examples of both success and failure in this regard in the public environment. Just a hugely target-rich environment for media studies opportunities. And we're going to begin by looking at Tucker Carlson in this present moment. Now, Tucker Carlson has chosen to dedicate one of his very recent podcasts to drawing the parallels between Donald Trump and the biblical Antichrist. That's very interesting to me. So Tucker Carlson objects to Donald Trump's policy with respect to the war in Iran. Donald Trump objects to the influence of Israel within the American administration. Donald Trump has some domestic policy differences with Donald Trump, especially on the kind of distribution of power throughout the country. And so he has chosen to begin to attack the president. However, it's very interesting the way that he chooses to do this. And I should say Tucker Carlson also very obviously objects to the administration's use of various religious imagery, whether it's the Truth Social post that he sent out portraying himself as Jesus, or whether it's his current feud with the Pope over humanitarian concerns during war. That's obviously at least part of the motivation behind Tucker Carlson's attempt to attack the president and his agenda. But it's interesting that he chooses to frame the attack by likening Trump to the Antichrist. If you imagine that this was, I don't know, an election campaign in Canada in the 90s, overwhelmingly it is likely that he would attack a person of the personality of Donald Trump as arrogant and brash, as too irresponsible to be trusted with power, too immature to be trusted with power, something like this. But instead, he chooses this this particular form. And I don't think that there's anything accidental about that. If we remember our Marshall McLuhan, we'll see that Marshall McLuhan is very famous for the statement, "The medium is the message." And by that, I think it's proper to read much more than just, this is true in a much deeper way than simply the way in which a particular piece of media is consumed, whether it's a book or a newspaper article or a television program, but also all the aesthetic tradition, its place within society, is an element of the message being delivered. And Tucker Carlson has, for better or for worse, taken up this kind of deeply conspiratorial and pseudo-religious frame for quite a long time. He's regularly featured aliens and UFOs as an element of his show over the last couple of years. He has made prominent the question of demons and of angels in his discussion of these phenomena and his discussion of the political elite within the United States. Recently, he notably put out a post describing how Muslims love Jesus in an attempt to kind of nudge his audience out of the kind of counter-jihad frame toward a frame in which Muslims are preferable to Israelis in the conflicts in which he would like to kind of guide U.S. policy. But he's done so kind of repeatedly in a tradition in conservative media that is pretty deeply held in the United States. This was derisively referred to by Richard Hofstadter as the paranoid style in American politics. It has a long history, particularly in talk radio, the use of this highly conspiratorial frame, this kind of mix of entertainment and falsehood in with serious discussion, this use of almost hyper-real frames where the evidence isn't quite there in order to draw attention back to a more fundamental point. You can recognize all of this in the style that Tucker Carlson is using, but also, like, if you look at his studio, you can see he's kind of taking a lot from the talk radio tradition and he's combining it with, I mean, he's got a poster in behind him talking about the miracles of Fatima, which again kind of fit into this this American tradition of communicating. And I think it's well advised for the operation that he's intending to take up this frame. This tradition in American media, derisively referred to as the paranoid style, is very familiar and very much owned by a substantial and critical element of Trump's base in kind of working class white America in the middle of the country. And so if you wanted to attack Donald Trump and undermine him with his own base, this is an ideal kind of format with which to communicate to that base. I want to draw a parallel here to kind of underscore the point. If you compare Tucker Carlson to Rush Limbaugh circa the Obama administration, from 2006 to 2014, Rush Limbaugh repeatedly featured what became known as the birther conspiracy theory, which was the theory that Barack Obama was not, in fact, born in the United States and therefore ineligible to become president. The theory was based on some kind of marginal evidence around the inability of Barack Obama to produce an original birth certificate proving that he was born in Hawaii. And it had all kinds of weird and wonderful variations where Barack Obama was some flavor of Kenyan Muslim, and famously Barack Hussein Obama, right? Now, that on the surface that looks very silly, but sitting kind of one layer underneath it points to a very fundamental reality that Barack Obama was not a member of the same. He was not, so rather than not being a natural born American in the sort of technical legal sense, it points to the fact that Barack Obama was not born to either of the governing classes that have governed the United States for 200 plus years, right? He was not a WASP born like Roosevelt or like George W. Bush. He's not even part of the kind of Catholic coalition behind Kennedy. He was from an entirely different identity group. He was not connected to the historical American elite, at least in the way that previous presidents and even subsequent presidents of the United States have been. And so whether or not the claims that he was not a natural-born American citizen and therefore not eligible for the presidency was true, it pointed to a kind of deeper underlying spiritual reality that he was foreign to the group of people who had governed that nation for a very long time. And at a psychological level, as foreign to as a foreigner, therefore in some way illegitimate. And so you can see how this style of communication communicates with things that are not necessarily literally true, and yet uses them to communicate truths which are actually pretty fundamental. And I think Tucker is picking up this point as well by attempting to tar Donald Trump with an association with the Antichrist. He's communicating some underlying truth that Donald Trump has a relationship with Christianity, which is deeply troubling and should be deeply troubling to red American Christians who form a key element of his support base. And by this frame, people like Paula White, his Truth Social post depicting himself as Jesus, these will all come into the focus and mind of his audience. And I think this is actually very effective propaganda for undercutting Trump in its own kind of interesting way. All that in mind, we got to remember here that we live in polities where the interaction between the public image that is so carefully crafted by our political leaders and the media environment within which they operate is the layer at which popular consent for government is formed, right? Donald Trump, to kind of continue the example, famously entered the White House with a kind of irreverent style, a degrading style. Very famous exchange here between Hillary Clinton, quote from Hillary, "It's awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country." And Donald Trump responds, "Because you'd be in jail." All right. You can see how in the environment of 2016, when the nation was at peace, when the nation was struggling with a kind of, if you think back to the Obama administration, where the elite of the United States had spent a decade talking down to middle America. There were no real external threats. The biggest concern the biggest kind of concern there were very visible failures of the American elite that were kind of all around everyone. There was the open border, there was the Iraq War, but you're operating in an environment where irreverence towards the elite, a willingness to be rude, a willingness to be funny, a willingness to cut through an entrenched consensus was very palatable to the American audience. And you can see how in the years since, this is, the now famous tweet from Mr. Trump describing his intention to eradicate Iranian civilization. You can see, again, if we look at this from a Medium point of view, it's posted on Truth Social, this kind of obscure social media site. There's the picture of Donald Trump with the American flag face paint on him. It's in this kind of all caps boomer post style. You can see how the same personality type is manifesting against a completely different media background. 2016 is a time where everybody is kind of looking for this unserious willingness to cut through a kind of stuffy consensus. Barack Obama was a very over serious, a person who very obviously took himself way too seriously, and Hillary Clinton is very much out of this tradition. You couldn't imagine Hillary Clinton having an off-camera face that was, somebody that you could relate to, and it worked very well for him at that point. We're now 10 years later, and Donald Trump's political personality is absolutely locked. He can't reinvent himself. He's the most famous person in the world, and it's not even close. And so he has to operate in a very serious situation with the world at war in Ukraine, with the world at war in Iran. He has to continue to operate using this established media personality, and you can see how it's just not very well suited to the moment of these kind of high stakes negotiations with the Iranian government. There are people who find this reasonable, but a huge fraction of his base is the tone is not especially palatable. And if we think about the way that media personalities of leaders kind of relate to their backdrop, my attention is drawn back to somebody who was a little bit more successful, but had was faced with a challenge in meeting the moment, and unlike Donald Trump, who has not tried to reinvent himself, who is the same person today he was 10 years ago, Justin Trudeau went through a real evolution in the public eye in an attempt to keep the tone of his administration in keeping with the media environment that was its backdrop. You can see here Justin Trudeau, back when he came onto the political scene. This is the first major media event by which we were introduced to Justin. His charity boxing match with Conservative MP. I don't even remember the name of the Conservative MP. But he begins with the first images of him in public being with his shirt off as a boxer. He famously had like a big PDA kiss with his wife at the end of the match. You can see how he cultivated a very youthful a very youthful image intended to cut directly across the gray-haired, sort of steady dad image of Stephen Harper at the time. And as he moved towards the election, he paired this kind of rebellious rock star image with a little, just a touch more seriousness, so that he could be seen as like the rebel rock star who's now got a serious job and can kind of have one foot in each world. It worked beautifully in a moment when Canadians felt very sure of themselves. It was the middle of the Great Awakening, and so his feminism played really, really well with millennials to kind of pair with this rock star rebellious image that was targeted at Gen X and boomers, and it worked beautifully, and it was an absolutely merciless cross to Stephen Harper and his kind of stuffy, stodgy, plotting style, right? Stephen Harper was, a little bit overweight, loved to wear those sweater vests, very much like a contrasted figure. And the subconscious message here was out with the old, in with the new. We're in a period of peace. You can be confident to go with something new. It was beautifully crafted. But Justin Trudeau had a problem that I don't think anybody around him ever expected, and that was the COVID-19 pandemic. And in the face of a global pandemic, when Canadians' security was threatened for the first time in a long time, Justin Trudeau, attempted to reinvent his public image in order to become what Canadians wanted in that moment. He changed his hair. He put some Just for Men in his beard. He started to dress differently. His speaking style was a little bit more kind of face to camera, familiar in kind of the older Canadian tradition. And he went from the youthful rock star trying to remake Canada as a new feminist utopia into the firm hand at the wheel, the man who trusted the science and represented the competent managerial class of the country in the face of crisis. Now, this was always a bit of a stretch for Justin Trudeau. It always kind of wore thin. Even putting aside the policy choices around COVID-19 that were tremendously unpopular, it was always very hard for Justin Trudeau to play this part. He was too young. The image that he had cultivated to take on Stephen Harper was now a liability. He managed to get himself by Erin O'Toole, a tremendously weak conservative leader who had a whole pile of PR vulnerabilities of his own. But this was always going to be a political challenge for Mr. Trudeau. And in its shadow, the Conservative Party of Canada crafted precisely the man to take that public image on, and that was Pierre Poliever. Pierre Poilievre created a public image which is in the long tradition of Prarie populism, right? He cast himself against the kind of overprivileged, kind of overeducated college boy as the rural voice of common sense, right? This is the famous exchange between him and a reporter in which he eats an apple and kind of goes on and on about cost of living, dollars and cents kinds of issues. And this was a public image crafted precisely to take on Justin Trudeau. And it was crafted precisely to take on Justin Trudeau in an election over cost of living issues. I want to play a clip of this iteration of Pierre Poilievre just to kind of hammer home some of this.
The rabbi tells me that on this stage there have been 3 Israeli prime ministers, Elie Wiesel, and countless other dignitaries. So as you can imagine, it's a pretty big honor for a simple guy from the prairies to stand before you today.
My goodness. He's so good at this affectation. Listen to the false slip. So's you can imagine. All right. Pierre Poliever has been public speaking his entire life. That is not an accident. That's not a slip to his country roots. That is Pierre Poliever affecting himself as a rural Western Canadian, in contrast to the kind of urbane Jewish donor class that he's speaking to, in order to demonstrate his ability to sell himself to the people that that donor class would like to rule over, right? It's a perfect affectation to try to sell how he's going to go and stand in contrast to spoiled rich kid Justin Trudeau and bring some common sense from the grounded, earthy, rural parts of the country and displace Justin Trudeau. Now, two things happened that completely sunk this plan. The first is the trade dispute between Canada and the United States. And the second is that instead of running a cost of living election against Justin Trudeau, he found himself running an election over Canadian sovereignty with Mark Carney. Now, Mark Carney is not overprivileged rich kid Justin Trudeau. Mark Carney is a perfect embodiment from a public image point of view and possibly from a substantial point of view of the Toronto managerial class. In the way he self-presents, in the way that he speaks, in the kind of history of his public appearance as having been governor of the Bank of Canada during the Harper administration. Just absolutely letter perfect presentation as a centrist, having worked for the Conservatives in the past, having this kind of demeanor to him, this kind of old white guy aesthetic. If you listen to how he speaks, just give this.
The ceremony we just witnessed reflects the wonder of a country built on the bedrock of three peoples: Indigenous, French, and British. The office of the Governor-General links us through the Crown and across time to Canada's proud British heritage.
Now, it's a little bit accentuated because of whoever put that video up on TikTok cut it up a little bit, but you can hear his clipped speech. You can hear the style of speaking, which says, I am a serious Anglo-Canadian kind of business executive planning to operate this country in a professional manner. And if you look at the image dialectic here, we had Pierre Poliever, who wanted the image dialectic of running against an overprivileged rich kid who had no common sense in an election over cost of living. Now he's running an election against an embodiment of kind of corporate management in Canada with a very kind of professional outlook. It really doesn't help that Pierre Poliever looks a lot younger than Mark Carney. Really doesn't help that he doesn't wear a suit as well as Mark Carney. He doesn't have the kind of Tony Blair open collar thing the way Mark Carney does. His speech is, he sounds rural and parochial, stood next to Mark Carney. He's going to lose. In an environment where the Canadian people feel threatened, especially older Canadians, by the rhetoric coming out of Washington, he's going to lose this dialectic 100 times out of 100, and he's going to lose it very, very badly. And the reason he's going to lose this is he set up his whole public image specifically to be in dialectic with something that's no longer on the political table in Canada. And unlike Justin Trudeau, who attempted for better or for worse to reinvent himself as a serious person, it's not really possible for Pierre Poliever to lose these kinds of affectations that he adopted in order to look like a rural man of the people with common sense. And it's not really possible for him to, it would be very difficult for him, given his media position, given the dynamics at the CPC, to cast Mark Carney as a kind of unserious, rich kid libtard the way that Justin Trudeau was. Even if that might actually be substantively the truth, it's just never going to cut through the aesthetics. And so you have this environment now where Pierre Poliever as a media creation, is a man on a mission that is never going to occur. And look, a lot can happen between now and 3 years from now when the next election is going to happen. But it seems extremely unlikely that he's ever going to be able to fight the election that his media image was specifically crafted to fight. He's not going to get the media environment where cost of living is the issue again. He's not going to get the media environment where he can kind of play himself as the voice of rural common sense against Mark Carney, who is never going to be easy to caricature as a kind of in over his head rich kid, the way Justin Trudeau was. And so you have this situation where it's very likely that the image he's crafted is never going to get the right background in order for him to have any success winning an election, especially an election where the Conservative Party of Canada is at this kind of structural disadvantage to the Liberals because of the superior position of the Liberals from a patronage point of view within Canadian politics. And so you can see here across many media figures how the image that they carefully craft interacts against a media backdrop that evolves with a combination of events and sort of the international tenor of the media in order to produce a dialectic that is either favorable or unfavorable to the candidate, and usually is favorable at first because the image is crafted specifically for a moment, and then when the moment moves on in the media and when the opposition is able to craft a targeted response, there's a new moment and it's difficult for the incumbent leader to kind of shed their old media image in order to respond specifically to what's come, which produces this pattern of a political shelf life to leaders in this country. All right. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope this has been a valuable experience, and I hope you find the rise and fall of these media constructions on top of actual personalities as comical as I do. I want to point out that not a single thing that I've said here relates at all to the substantive policies of these political figures. It's very easy to make a clean argument that Mark Carney, for example, is as unserious a person as Justin Trudeau is or was in the way that he governs, or even for that matter to some extent in his personal life, right? Mark Carney transed his own child. Mark Carney is from precisely the same social background that Justin Trudeau is. And so you could, it's difficult to tar him that way because he's had like a serious job, but it's not like the Bank of England was tremendously successful while he was its governor, nor is it really the case that the Bank of Canada was responsible for successfully steering Canada through the 2008 recession. These things start to come apart pretty quickly when you look at them under any kind of microscope. But he carries himself that way. And in a political moment where Canada feels its sovereignty and its economic position threatened, he's a perfect political figure to cut against that media moment. All right, thanks for your time and attention. I hope you learned something.
Canada originally was put together by two groups of people who didn't have much in common but didn't want to be American.
The line just popped into my head. A bunch of the boys was a-whooping it up. And there I got my start.
We have had a flag. Flags can be changed. But flags cannot be imposed, the sacred symbols of a people's hopes and aspirations, by the simple, capricious, personal choice of a Prime Minister of Canada.
I have watched this country for half of my life from abroad, and we have turned complacency into just that, a national sport.
I am resolutely opposed to all innovation, all change, but I am determined to understand what's happening. I don't choose just to sit and let the juggernaut roll over me.